Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking Transport Canada's highly technical Notice of Proposed Amendment 2026-005 and breaking it down into a really clear roadmap. If you operate a remotely piloted aircraft system, an RPAS, listen up, because this is literally the blueprint for how the skies above you are about to change.
Okay, let's start with this massive number. Over 116,000. That is how many registered drones we have in Canada right now. I mean, we've moved way past just a few hobbyists flying in a park on a Sunday, right? RPAS are being adopted at an incredible scale in agriculture, mining, real estate, and by first responders. And the rapid explosion of this technology means we desperately need a totally new approach to managing our airspace.
So, to cut through this dense policy, we're going to navigate through 5 key areas. 1. The crowded sky. 2. Remote ID explained. 3. Navigating new airspace rules. 4. Recreational clubs and communities. And finally, 5. The timeline for compliance.
Part 1. The crowded sky and how we are addressing these growing pains.
So here's the core problem we're facing. Right now, our current regulations rely on conventional aviation concepts, like temporary restricted airspace, to keep drones away from sensitive areas like prisons or critical infrastructure. But trying to force modern drone data into rules that were meant for traditional aircraft flying at 30,000 feet, it just isn't working anymore. The tools are really struggling to keep up.
It all really boils down to accountability and safety. Right now, when an incident report comes in about a rogue drone, there's almost zero information to actually identify who is flying it. Plus, if you try to restrict airspace for low-flying drones by just slapping it onto conventional aviation maps, you end up completely overloading those charts. It turns them into an unreadable bowl of spaghetti. They were never designed for this dynamic, low-altitude traffic, and it's super frustrating for conventional pilots and drone operators to decipher.
Which brings us to Part 2. Remote ID explained, or what is essentially the digital license plate.
Think of Remote ID as a digital license plate for your drone. It functions a lot like a transponder in traditional aviation. By continuously transmitting your positioning and identification info, it supports air traffic controllers, public safety officials, and future automated traffic systems. It essentially takes your drone and makes it electronically visible to the exact people who need to keep the airspace safe.
In practice, there are 2 different ways this is going to work. First, you've got Broadcast Remote ID. This uses local signals like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth to beam data directly from the drone to nearby receivers, like a smartphone. It's awesome because it doesn't need an internet connection, but obviously it has a pretty limited range. On the flip side, we have Network Remote ID. This pushes your data through cellular or satellite networks, so you get massive wide area coverage, but you are completely dependent on having a network connection, which, let's be honest, is a very real consideration if you're flying in remote parts of Canada. Now, if you fly a drone weighing anywhere from 250 grams up to 150 kilograms, your gear will be mandated to continuously transmit these specific data points. And notice something really important here. It's not just the drone's location being broadcast. It's also the latitude, longitude, and altitude of the control station. That means the pilot's location is visible. This directly solves that massive accountability problem Transport Canada has with anonymous incident reports.
But here's the good news. Transport Canada is smartly focusing on performance-based standards. Essentially, they're telling manufacturers the what that needs to be done, without dictating the exact technical how. So, as long as your drone or your plug-in module meets an approved international mark like the ASTM F3411 standard, you are fully compliant. That kind of flexibility is fantastic because the technology can keep evolving without lawmakers having to rewrite the rules every 6 months.
All right, Part 3. Navigating new airspace rules. We are going agile and digital.
Remember those clunky aviation manuals and 56-day publication cycles we talked about earlier? Transport Canada is tossing those out for drones and introducing RPAS geozones instead. These are fast, fully digital geographic restrictions distributed in real time. So, if a temporary flight restriction needs to go up around, say, a high-profile VIP event or a permanent one around a nuclear facility, that data gets pushed out digitally, directly to the operators.
And teaming up with geozones is the concept of geo-awareness. Think of this as a super smart GPS built right into your control station. Manufacturers will actually be required to feed those digital geozones directly into the drone's interface. It actively alerts you to airspace changes and prevents you from accidentally flying into a restricted zone. It completely takes the guesswork out of reading complicated aeronautical charts.
Moving on to Part 4, recreational clubs and communities and alternative mitigations.
Now you might be wondering, what if I'm just a weekend hobbyist flying a model aircraft at my local club field? Does all this apply to me? Well, to ease the regulatory burden on safe, fixed-location recreational flyers, Transport Canada is looking at international examples like the FAA in the US and the EASA in Europe. They want to implement a community-based organization model. This acknowledges that traditional model aircraft clubs have very distinct needs and operate in highly controlled fixed environments.
So rather than slapping all those heavy commercial certification and registration burdens onto every single individual member, organized clubs can apply for alternative safety mitigations. If a club has tracked membership, accountable executives, and fixed geographic flying sites, they can just govern their localized flights using their own approved safety procedures. It's a really smart way to regulate the commercial side without crushing the weekend hobbyist.
And finally, Part 5, the timeline for compliance, focusing on a phased implementation.
Okay, the big question. When do you actually have to upgrade your drone or buy a broadcast module? This timeline proves you have plenty of time to adapt without panicking. The final rules are planned for publication in the Canada Gazette in 2028. After that, RPAS manufacturers get a full year, until 2029, to make sure all their new products have the proper tech built in. And you, the pilot, you get all the way until 2030 to actually comply, whether that's buying a new drone or retrofitting your current one. Transport Canada has explicitly stated this phased approach is intentionally designed to keep you from taking a huge financial hit. By stretching out that pilot deadline to 2030, it allows your older generation of non-compliant drones to just age out naturally. They reach the end of their life cycle before any strict enforcement begins. It's a surprisingly practical approach to what is a massive technological shift.
Ultimately, all of these changes, from the digital license plates to the real-time airspace alerts, they're laying the groundwork for incredibly advanced automated operations and a true RPS traffic management system in Canada. The sky is evolving fast, which leaves us with one final thought based on the timeline we just covered. Is your drone ready for the future of flight?